Jim, man, thank you so much for coming on the show here today. Really excited to have you on. I've been a big fan of your work for years. Could you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I grew up in Connecticut on the East Coast. I now live in Hollywood, California, Los Angeles.
Nice.
California. But I grew up in Connecticut, not in Martha Stewart, Connecticut, that everybody kind of likes to think about, but in more blue collar, Connecticut. And, I was lucky because I know a lot of people who took to weightlifting maybe as teenagers, and their parents or friends and family would kind of, give them, slack for, why are you spending all this time in the gym? It was the opposite for me. My dad worked out, his father was a professional boxer, nothing, legitimate where that was his career. He was also a mason, bricklayer. Right. That was really how he made money, but he was a professional boxer. And then on my mom's side, she had a cousin who was on the U.S. Olympic weightlifting team back in the 60s. Oh, so wow. I had, strength culture. It surrounded me. And in fact, on my father's side, I also had a cousin who competed in bodybuilding. So when I was like 12, 13, I was going to these local bodybuilding competitions to watch him. So I was, indoctrinated, if you will, into this, strength training and physical culture. It was, it was a big part of growing up. And I wanted to spend time with my dad, and he built this gym down in the basement, nothing spectacular. We had a bench, dumbbells, but he would take pulleys, like garage door pulleys and cables and make, a cable crossover, a lat pull down. He made a leg press.
Oh, that's cool.
Mainly out of wood. So, and I wanted to spend time with my dad. So for as long as I could remember, 6, 7 years old, I was down in the basement, doing, some working out with my dad. And then I just gravitated. I loved it. And, I was spending more time in the basement than my father was. And then, I started competing in bodybuilding as a teenager. And then if you want to get into the career, when I graduated high school around 1986. Now, for anyone who knows anything about exercise science, if you go back to 1986 and talk about American College of Sports Medicine, there, the research that we're seeing now, does weights burn more fat than cardio? How many sets builds muscle? Is it long length partials? Is it, how much volume? What's the rep range, right? There was none of that. And literally no one was looking at resistance training or weightlifting. It was all cardio. Cardio. So I knew, I was reading Muscle, like you said earlier when we jumped on here and connected. I was reading Muscle and Fitness as a teenager, and I could remember learning about muscle fiber types. I was 13 years old. Muscle fiber, oh wow, there's a difference in the muscles the fibers that you have. This is incredible. There's a whole science there. So I knew I wanted to do something with, athletes, some sort. So the only thing that I could really get in blue collar Connecticut was, go to an athletic training program. Maybe you could be an orthopedist someday, go to med school eventually. So I started at University of Connecticut in athletic training, the sports medicine program, dealing with injuries and prevention of injuries, heat injuries as well. We did a lot of that. University of Connecticut was a big research arm on heat illnesses and exercising in the heat. So I learned a lot of that. But then I had this class we had to take called exercise physiology. And again, this is, I'm an 18-year-old kid. I have not been exposed to any other than what I was reading in the magazines, but really didn't know this was an area called exercise physiology that people were studying. And, one of the first classes, the professor starts talking about growth hormone and testosterone. And I'm like, what, what's going on here? And, and from that point, I was a changed man. I graduated in the athletic training, but then I knew that I wanted to go on and do some form of research. So I actually went to Auburn next for a master's, but I was working in biomechanics then. And the nice thing about Auburn was, and this is going back to 1990, they were one of the bigger strength labs, and again, there weren't a lot, like I said, there was very little research in strength in weightlifting, but Auburn back in the, like I said, 1990s now. They were known for some of their strength research, and they had, Bill Kazmaier, he used to be the world's strongest man. He lives in Auburn. He's a gym in Auburn. He would come into the lab. We'd be studying Bill Kazmaier at Auburn, not college-age students. We'd have the strongest man in the world studying him on his biomechanics. And so it was an amazing, amazing opportunity. But then I went on to Georgia Southern. Auburn, with politics, it kind of disbanded the whole lab. These are in academia. There's a lot of politics.
There is
a lot of politics,
absolutely.
and so the whole kind of lab disbanded, and professors went different ways. And one of them went over to Georgia Southern, so I went with him. But there, they were mainly focused on sports nutrition and supplementation. So I was looking at medium chain triglycerides that was my master's thesis, and if they provided any difference in substrate, what are you burning during your workouts? But this isn't like 1991, before anyone knew what really coconut oil was.
Right. Right.
I don't know if you remember a bodybuilder coach called John Perillo. He was area. He was big on medium chain triglycerides. This is back before anyone knew really what's the difference between, long length fatty acids, short chains, medium chains. No one really understood that, but he thought that they had some potential. So that was a study that I did as a master's student. And then I went on I worked in cardiac rehab, in wellness, in a hospital setting for a little bit in between, before I went back to get my PhD at University of Connecticut, and sort of specializing in growth hormone and testosterone and cytokines, what happens when you're doing like an eccentric exercise. Yeah, sure. With recovery. And I was actually I convinced my professors at UConn in the exercise science department to allow me to get a double degree, doctoral degree, the other in biochemistry. And so I was working in the biochemistry department, looking at gluconeogenesis, which is, the way the body produces glucose without consuming glucose, right? Anyway, my professor actually died from a massive heart attack in the biochemistry department. His father did the same thing. He was out for a run, and he actually died. So there was nobody in the biochemistry department that could really take on my work. So I ended up getting a minor degree in my doctoral in biochemistry at University of Connecticut. But then I went on to Yale School of Medicine, the Department of Cellular Molecular Physiology, where I actually studied gene regulation in exercise and nutrition. So we were looking at, what happens, when you exercise, you turn on certain genes, you turn off certain genes. What happens when you eat something? What happens when you fast? What happens when you follow that fast with a high carb meal? What happens when you follow that fast with a high protein meal? And we looked at the different genes mainly involved in metabolism throughout the body, because, this is where it all starts. We see things at the, here at
superficial.
Exactly. Superficial level, but really everything that you put in your mouth, that you supplement of food and exercise, it all starts with the gene, with activation, of genes. And so, I really saw that as the future of not just science and medicine, but understanding exercise in the outcomes that we have. If you can't understand at the molecular level what's going on, it's hard to apply it. So.
And what year was that?
This is in 2000. I graduated UConn with a PhD in 2000, and then was at Yale till 2002. And then I was writing articles for Muscle and Fitness, taking my research and just sort of applying it. And they loved the stuff that I was writing. As an undergrad, I had a minor in English as well. I love to write.
So you touched all the bases, dude.
So it's very, it's critical, because you have to be able to organize your thoughts. Yep. If you're writing a book, if you're doing a video, on a topic, you have to be able to organize those thoughts. And, there's no better way to learn how to organize your thought process than with an English degree. And so, that was very helpful. So, when I was at Yale, I'm doing, research on, metabolic genes and fasting and uncoupling proteins and looking at all this. Meanwhile, I'm on PubMed and I'm like, oh, new creatine study. I don't have time to read that. I've got to get grants for, my research. You've got to, you have blinders on as a research scientist. And so I saw all this other research going by that I didn't even have time to look at. And so, Muscle and Fitness liked my work. They were looking for a science editor. They wanted somebody to, take the look at the information that was coming in, vet it before they put it into the magazine. And when they asked me if I had any interest, I was like, yes, this is exactly, something that I'm cut out for, to be able to bridge that gap between what's going on in the lab and actually how to apply it in the gym or in the kitchen. So I left Yale School of Medicine to the surprise of all my colleagues. They wanted to do an intervention with me, literally. I had just won the American Physiological Young Investigator Award for my research on gene regulation and exercise. And, they viewed me as a star at Yale. I'm a star. You're going places. You're here at Yale. Why would you leave? You're going to
I know.
Bodybuilding magazines are like, wait, let me get this straight. Are you feeling okay? And so they literally wanted to have an intervention. And I was like, no, this is me coming full circle. These are the magazines that got me into science. This is why. This is what I do. And I see this as, my way of bridging that gap for everybody. And, looking back now, 20-something years later, I'm glad I took that leap.
Dude, that is such a cool story. And I never knew all that. Like, I just knew you as the guy that had worked for Muscle and Fitness and Flex, but I didn't know all of the research that you had done before that and all that time. If you've never done this, you have no idea how long it takes to get a master's, to get a PhD, how much time and energy goes into that.
Decades.
So decades. And furthermore, you are ahead of the curve. Like, what my point before was like, dude, you're looking at epigenetics in 2000. How many other people are looking at that point in time? Probably not many.
Not many. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. It's not what it is today. Let's put it like that. So you've been ahead of the curve the whole time, man. You've been ahead of the curve, my friend.
That's my job, is to, be ahead of the curve.
Yeah. So, okay, before we dive into like the nuts and bolts here, talk to me about what you're doing today, right? Because I think it was 13 years with Weider, Muscle Fitness, Flex, all of those things. What are you doing now? Yeah.
So now I have my own fitness company. I have a website with an app, your workout app. You can go on, bring that anywhere you want. And then I have a supplement line called JYM, Supplement Science, that I launched in 2013. And, when I look back now, I never intended to own a supplement company. If you asked me 15 years ago, even if I would own a supplement company, I would tell you, no, I'm not a businessman. But what I was doing is I was reviewing supplements for the magazines.
Yep.
And, I would get a pre-workout and I would turn it around and it would be all proprietary blends. Like, how much beta-alanine is in here, How much creatine? I give recommendations in the magazine based on, you need 5 grams if you're doing creatine monohydrate. If you're doing beta-alanine, you need, 2 to 3.2 gram dose. If you're taking, whatever it is, how can I recommend these products if they're not going to tell me the dosing? And so I would contact them, and many times they would refuse to provide that. But more times than not, surprisingly, they would provide it to me. And you're looking at like 500 milligrams of creatine in this product, right?
What a scam.
And so, they do what I call pixie dust, just so they could list it. That's what the proprietary, but everybody used to think, oh, the proprietary blend protects their intellectual property. I'm like, there's no intellectual property. You think that these supplement companies have actual scientists like myself formulating these things in labs? No.
Right.
They're going, what's the biggest buzzword? Creatine? Beta-alanine? You got to put some of that in there. Just put some of it, just a little bit so we can list it on the label. It was protecting their ability to fool the consumer and to make cheap products that, unfortunately, ruined the name of supplements, because if you look at the science and you know which supplements to take, when to take them, what the proper dose is, the proper form is, there are numerous supplements that can be very beneficial, right?
Yep.
And especially for people who are really trying to push the envelope, right? I'm not talking about your average, Joe or average Jane, right? Is beta alanine going to change their life? Probably not. But if there's somebody who's, competing in boxing or martial arts, is it going to help them? Probably. Beta alanine probably could help them. So it was unfortunate that these companies were taking good ingredients like creatine and making them seem useless because you weren't getting a proper dose. I kind of compare it to like ibuprofen, right? What's the standard dose of ibuprofen? Was it 200 milligrams?
200 milligrams,
right?
sure.
Everybody knows that, right? You can go to a 7-Eleven and grab a pack of ibuprofen. It's going to be 200 milligrams. What if some company decided, hey, if we put 5 milligrams in there, right? Don't list the amount on there. Do you know how cheap that would be to make? We could charge this almost the same price as any ibuprofen.
Yep.
We'd be making 10 times the profit. If somebody did that, what would happen to ibuprofen? You would think ibuprofen doesn't work.
Yep.
Right? If it wasn't given at the proper dose. And so these companies were literally, ruining the perception of certain ingredients. And so I decided, look, enough is enough. There's nothing on the market that I can even recommend or even take for myself. And so I was writing formulas for people. Put this much creatine in there, put this much beta alanine, put this much branched chain amino acids in there, put this much caffeine, and teaching them how to build their own. And so I just took that formula and mass produced it. And, everybody knew the formula already. That was pre-gym. So I launched a pre-workout. And this is in 2013. Again, you have to step back. Like we talked about the magazines. There was a time when you had to go to a newsstand to buy information on how to train, right?
Yep.
In 2013, most of the pre-workouts were these tiny little 3 to 5 gram scoops because it was all stimulants. And then it got worse. They started saying that it's super concentrated. So there's only 1 gram of branch chains in here, but it's like 5 grams of branch chains in every other supplement. And I'm like, you can't concentrate a branch chain amino acid like leucine any further down to than what it's already been concentrated.
Right.
There's no way that they're actually lying. And so that's when I decided, you know what? Let's make a supplement. And this is when I was working with bodybuilding.com. I actually presented to them this concept because they had a nice platform where you can actually educate.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure. Yeah.
And so they loved the concept. Anyway, and we launched with pre-gym. And like I said, most supplement pre-workouts were like a 3, a 5, maybe a 6 or 7 gram scoop.
Yep.
Mine was about 24 grams. And in fact, people were complaining about it. They were like, this is like scooping a protein powder into and it's like, yeah, you've been fooled. This is what you need if you want enough creatine, branched chain amino acids, beta alanine, betaine. That's actually what, a scoop should look like. You know what I mean? And second of all, you're complaining about getting more. Like,
right. That's such a messed up
complaint is that there's too many ingredients, you're getting too many ingredients. So they had the entire supplement consumer had to be re-educated about, look, if you want to take things that are going to be beneficial to your workout, these are what they are, and these are the doses. It's not going to be this, stimulants will have you flying high and feeling great, but, is it really going to provide you benefits that are long lasting and enhance your results that you're getting from the workout? Not really,
Right. Man, so there's so much I want to talk to you about today. I'd love to start just talking training because I feel like we probably come from a similar background there. But I had to go back and look because I didn't know what the current numbers are like. But the CDC shows right now, 74% of Americans are overweight and 40% are considered obese. So with that being said, that's mind-blowing.
From our perspective, at least.
Absolutely. And furthermore, I don't know.
Because we know it doesn't have to be that way,
It doesn't. And man, if you go overseas, it's not like that.
Nope.
That's been one of the craziest things. As I've traveled more and I've seen more parts of the world, it's not like that everywhere. So I would love to just start really general. If you're talking to somebody that's brand new, what is your overarching philosophy on training and nutrition? Where do we get started?
So, well, I mean, are we getting started like with a beginner here? Starting them? Because, you know,
how would you help a trainer or coach start to educate their
somebody who's already training, right? What's
yes.
the, you know, kind of, yeah, right. So, you know, one of the, you know, I'm a firm believer in, you know, finding the research that shows benefits, right? Like supersets, for example. Doing supersets have been shown to increase calorie burn during the workout by about 30%, 35% or so, as well as after. Okay, 35%. Now, a lot of experts would say, well, if you did the math, 30% of more calorie burn would, you know, only be 100 something calories. So it's never going to provide a benefit for fat loss. And I'm like, well, hold up there. It's going to provide no benefit. Like, you know, let's say we did that and we coupled that with, say, you know, lower rest between sets, or we were coupling that with more compound moves, which are going to burn more calories as well. You know, I'm about taking these little nuggets that have been found in the research and then applying them into the program. And then you're not only getting a 30% from the supersets or, you know, whatever the percent increases, but then you're also doing this other technique. You're adding, you know, another technique, like cardiac acceleration, which is where I have them do cardio in between. So if you do a bench press, right, instead of just sitting around for 3 minutes, to your next set, you're going to do about a minute of some form of intense cardio, like bench step ups or whatever, right? A minute, and then get back to the bench press. You know, when you do all these little extra things that are, like I said, as long as they're supported in the research, they tend to add up and make a big difference. And, you know, I do these challenges every year. I have 3 fitness challenges that I do. I have my New Year's challenge, which kicks off typically in January. I have a summer shred challenge for people that want to get ready, you know, for the beach season or vacation, right? And then I have a holiday shred challenge before getting into the holidays. And, you know, we use my workouts and my nutrition tips, and it involves all those little nuggets of, you know, supersets and this and cardiac acceleration and that. And depending on the program, right, I'll bring in different, and the results are insane. You know, I'll do 4 to 6 week, you know, transformation challenge, and people can't believe that these people achieve those results in 4 to 6 weeks. And that's what I'm saying. It's like, it's those little tricks that they're doing that add up. And of course the work, they're putting in the work,
for sure,
keeping a positive attitude, but people are always like, why? I never did any of your workouts. And then I did your first challenge and I was able to drop 20. I've never been able to drop. And it's like, it's those little tips that all add up to provide you those benefits. So like I said, I'm a firm believer in the research, but then making sure that research works still in the gym, you know, because research is it's not the holy grail. Everybody, you know, most people who aren't research scientists look at a study, they really can't debate methods that were used or what type of a workout was this even, you know what I'm saying? Like I'll look at a study and be like, that's not even a workout. That's not a workout. You know what I mean? That's not the workout that people who follow me do. That doesn't, you know, that study doesn't really tell you much. So, you know, all research studies, just because they've been published, are not, you know, up on this, you know, pedestal. There's no perfect study. And so something that works in the lab or was found not to work doesn't necessarily mean that that's the case because there was a study done. It's not until we see study after study after study after study. In fact, when I was a doctoral student, I started at UConn in 1996. Creatine was just becoming a thing in 1996. Okay. So for those who can think back, as a doctoral student, I was also a weightlifter. So all the kids, the students, the undergrads wanted to ask me all the questions about how to bench press, and they didn't care about the professors because, those guys didn't work out.
Right.
So they wanted to know from me. So I was teaching a class, and typically one of the professors will sit in the back, just to listen in on when, the doctoral students are teaching class. Well, somebody asked me about creatine. Do I think it's effective? And there's only at this time maybe 2 or 3 studies on creatine, all showing positive results though. I said, in my opinion, creatine is very effective. If you look at the research that's been done so far, but also I said, there's not a single guy that I train with at the gym that's not taking it. And we've all noticed a difference. And my professor says, excuse me, Jim, you cannot be recommending a supplement that only has 3 studies to support its effectiveness at this time. It's too early to tell.
I remember those days though, man. That 96, I was just getting into college. So
I'm like,
we were all
Armstrong, look, the science is great, but I'm telling you, every one of us at the gym is using creatine, and we're all noticing a difference. And we didn't even know the health benefits, the benefits in the nervous system, possibly longevity. It can even help protect you against ultraviolet, protect you from UV damage from the sun as well.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that one. Huh. Wow. That is very
anyway,
cool.
So like I said, I like to look at the real world, results as well as what the lab kind of says.
Well, and too, like kind of once you have kind of your big rocks in place, then it's just tightening the screws. And that's what you're talking about, right? It's like, hey, you've got your core philosophy. You don't go and blow that up every 5 years just because you're bored. You've got your philosophy, but then, okay, what research is out there? You just start tightening these screws until eventually you come to a point and you're like, no, this is really solid now.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
So okay.
The more research that comes out, we learn a little more.
Yeah.
We know nothing.
And you just
right now, we know nothing. People tell you this is how a muscle grows. No, we have no idea how a muscle. Yes, we have theories. We know the processes that are in place.
Yes.
But please tell me why you would increase muscle protein synthesis, and then you have something called a microRNA that comes and now eats that all away. Okay, because that's actually what happens. Why does the body waste energy building a protein to only then go break it down microseconds later? It doesn't make sense. And these are the things that we don't understand. We understand some of the steps and the processes, but we really don't know.
I love it. Okay, so something else, because obviously whenever I do these, I try and take like a deep dive into IG, YouTube, all of the ways where I can learn more about you. And I want to hear more about the SFS system. I would love you to just describe what it is and how you came about.
Yeah, so that's just a moniker for full. That's what I call my full split. The S is just the Stoppani full split system. So if we're talking about fat loss, right? We can talk about, cardio versus weights, right? And there's a recent study in obese individuals where they put them on either an hour of cardio or an hour of weights 3 times per week. And then one group did half and half. They did 30 minutes of weights, 30 minutes of cardio. They all lost the same amount of body fat over the course of a year, all of them, whether they were just weightlifting, whether they were doing just the cardio or they're doing the combination, right? So when we talk about my philosophy, I think weightlifting is just as important as cardio for fat loss. And so one of the tips that I would give people is who think that you should start with cardio. That's why I was asking you, are we talking about a beginner here? Or because a lot of beginners think, I'll just start with cardio, right? And get the fat, then I'll build the muscle. It's like, no, the muscle is the most critical part of the process. So, and in fact, may help you lose more body fat than the actual cardio will. So anyway, so that's the first thing. But then when we talk about weight training, right, let's talk about a full body workout or a bro split, right, as we like to call it now, where you're splitting up muscle groups like a bodybuilder would do, where they would train chest and triceps one day and then legs the next day, right, versus doing, an exercise for every muscle group. For fat loss, it appears that full body training is superior for fat loss. Than a split is. And again, we don't know all the mechanisms, but one that I theorize about is the fact that when you've trained every muscle, even if you're only doing 3 or 4 sets for that muscle group versus doing, like a bodybuilder where you're doing 18 sets, say, right?
Right. Just crushing
Even
your
if
chest.
you just did 4 sets for chest, you have to, it still has to recover, right?
Yep.
Not quite as much as doing 18, but it still has to recover. And recovery is a calorie consuming process, right?
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
if you went to the gym and just trained chest, sure, you're going to use your shoulders and triceps too. They're going to have to recover a little bit, but mainly you're recovering chest, right? If you went in and did chest and shoulders and biceps and triceps and back and legs and calves and abs, now all those muscles have to recover, right? And so they're all requiring calories for the recovery process. And so, that's one of the theories that, it's keeping your calorie burn ramped up for longer after. So, I'm a big proponent on full body training if your goal is mainly fat loss. And we can even talk about muscle growth. There's now research showing, is it better to train a muscle group once per week or twice per week or 3 times per week? And it appears that more frequently is probably a little better. Again, it's very minor differences. You know what I'm saying? And and then you can argue, well, Ronnie Coleman, who was Mr. Olympia, only trained his chest and biceps once per week. How did he grow? And it's like, well, he was taking something else that can probably help. But again, regardless, and in my opinion, I don't prescribe one way or the other. I mix it up. For example, I think somebody who's training a muscle group 3 times per week for 4 or 5 months would probably benefit from now going to once per week.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
You know it all. You hear people, I've been training 20 sets for chest and I can't grow anymore. And then they drop it to 6 sets per workout and now they're growing. Well, you did less and now you're getting results. So sometimes the stimulus needs to change.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So anyway, but with full body training, the problem is you don't have all day. So if you have to do chest and shoulders and back and biceps, what are you going to do? 3 or 4 sets per muscle group? Or most people have a job. You're not Arnold Schwarzenegger, whose career is to just work out. Arnold would be in the gym for hours and hours and hours. Yeah. And then we could talk about the difference between his training and Dorian Yates style of training where he's not in the gym for hours. And why did they're both Mr. Olympia? We know nothing about muscle growth because it seems like almost everything works, right? What works for one guy doesn't work for another guy. But anyway, so with full body training, one of the problems is you can only get 3 or 4 sets, and so as a bodybuilder, you can argue getting a muscle pump isn't just about walking around looking bigger, but it's placing stretch on that muscle membrane, possibly stimulating muscle protein synthesis, right? So what if you wanted to maximize body fat, but you also wanted to maximize muscle growth? So the concept of the full split here is it's combining a split with full body training. So for example, on Monday, let's say, Monday you come in and it's chest day for this. And I have different splits, right? Sure. But let's just say you're doing one main muscle group each workout. So Monday is chest day, just like a bro split. So you come in and you do 16 sets of chest, right? But then when your chest workout is done, you now do a full body workout for all the other muscle groups, right? Just 3 sets for biceps, 3 sets for shoulders, 3 sets for triceps, 3 sets for legs. And you come back to the gym, say, on Tuesday, and now it's back day. So now you come in and you focus 16 sets for back training. But then you do the rest of the body, chest, even though you did it yesterday. Now you're just going to do 3 sets of chest, 3 sets of shoulder. And so what the benefit there is you're getting this split, right, where you can still do, focus on one muscle group, get that pump, focus on that muscle, right? But then you're also stimulating those other muscles to have to recover so that you're maximizing that calorie burn that's going to be after the workout and the recovery process. And so it's just a kind of a way of combining the best of both worlds with the bro split and the full body training.
Yeah, no, I like that. And if you think about it too, there's probably an element of enhancing recovery to that as well, right? So,
Yes,
like you
because
go out, you crush yourself, then you go in and you do something the next day. It actually makes you feel better.
yes, and like
right?
I was saying, that like the 3 sets that like I said, you did a full chest workout on Monday. The 3 sets that you're doing on Tuesday isn't like you're going to failure. It's just 2 sets. You're pumping blood, right? And like you said, it's helping recovery because it's sending more blood to those recovering muscles. What's in the blood? Nutrients, oxygen, hormones. And then the other thing is that blood going to the muscle, there's now more blood flow going away from the muscle, and that's taking away waste products. So it certainly can help recovery. Thank you for bringing that up. And in fact, there was a recent study that showed that people who sit more, right? They train, they put them on a workout, and then they had one group, I can't remember how much sitting, but the ones that were sitting more had higher levels of creatine kinase and myoglobin, which are markers of muscle damage, for like 72 hours after the workout than the people who did more activity, who sat less and watched less TV. And again, that's my theory, is it comes down to the blood flow.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. That's cool. I've not really heard of that kind of split before, but that would be, I just think that would be a really cool way to kind of consolidate your training and get the best.
Yeah, you get the best
worlds,
of both worlds.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so then the next question is, because there's obviously the cardio people in the room, right? What role do you see cardio playing in fat loss?
So cardio is playing a role of calorie burn for fat, but depending on your cardio, right? Are you doing long, steady state cardio? Then you're burning more calories during the workout. Yeah. Right? That's where you're getting the benefit. If you're doing like Tabatas, the calorie burn is after the workout.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Right? That's where
absolutely.
That's where you, but either way, that cardio is providing you more calorie burn, right? So are weights though. So is weight training, right? They're both providing. Look, I'm a firm believer in manipulating macros and that it's not all about calories, but at the end of the day, it's still about calories, right?
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
about burning more calories, right? And so these are ways to burn more calories so you have more of an imbalance on intake and output. But cardio, the real critical part of cardio is the cardiovascular benefits. In that study that I talked about with the people who did either an hour of weights, an hour of cardio, it was only the group doing the cardio or the half cardio that saw benefits as far as, a reduced risk in cardiovascular diseases.
Yeah. Yep.
So you can't get the same benefits from cardio that you can from weights as far as health wise.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Weightlifting provides plenty of health benefits, for like type 2 diabetics, right? Numerous people who do my workouts got to stop taking their type 2 diabetes medicine because they're now exercising, right?
Yeah,
there are plenty of benefits to weight training, but cardiovascular benefits are only going to be maximized by rhythmic style of exercise, which is cardio,
Yeah. Dude, I'm so glad you point that out, because I think a lot of people get confused by that, right? And then it becomes polarizing, right? Well, I only do cardio or I only do weights, and you don't guys, there's like benefits to doing both.
You do both.
Do both.
You do both,
Yeah. Okay, so I have one more follow-up.
And like that study I said, the group that was doing half and half, if they did the full weight workout and the full cardio, they would have lost the most weight of fat of everyone. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Doing both.
So I have a question about that, and I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, but so you have your cardio, you have your half and half, and you have your strength group. Do you know, did they look at like body composition? You said they lost the same amount of weight.
Yeah. Yeah. They did body.
What did they find there?
I meant body fat. They lost the same amount of body fat.
Oh, okay.
They did not lose the same amount of weight. I'm sorry if I said weight. That was a mistake. In fact,
maybe I misheard you. I don't know.
In fact, the cardio group lost the most weight because they lost muscle.
See, that's where I was going with that.
And the groups that were doing weightlifting gained muscle. But body fat was exact. Literally, like almost exact.
That's crazy.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yes.
But again, this is where you try and educate your clients, right? And you just, again, like we mentioned a couple times now, it's not polarizing. It doesn't have to be one or the other. right? You need the strength training, you need the cardiovascular, because they give you different benefits. They're both
especially
beneficial.
the older you get,
Yes. No, I love it, man. Okay. So here's an easy one. What are the biggest mistakes you see people making when it comes to their fat loss workouts?
Well, I think we've talked about a few, like thinking that cardio is going to be the magic
pill
modality, if you will, the magic way to lose body. And like, there's nothing wrong with using cardio to lose body fat.
Right.
It's effective.
Yeah.
I mean, but would it be more effective to include, weight and that there, when you asked me about the study, like about weight loss versus fat loss,
yep.
There's the problem. 99.9% of people can only see weight change. They can't measure their body fat accurately, right?
Yeah, sure.
And don't give me bioelectrical impedance.
No, it's not good.
We know that's use literally. If I did a bioelectrical impedance right now, I'd be 20% body fat. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm about
and
6.
you could take it later and be a totally different number.
Right.
It's all over the place.
People don't have the ability to see the body fat. They only can see weight. And when you're weightlifting, you're, like you said, the group that weightlifted lost the same amount of body fat as the cardio group, but not the same amount of weight.
Yes.
Right. And so for the average person, what's your barometer? It's your weight, right?
Yes.
And so I think that's one of the major holdups with the weight training, is because the weight doesn't come off as fast.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Even though they're losing the body fat, they're probably, if they only used the mirror and used weightlifting and cardio versus just cardio, the weightlifting group would look much better in the mirror because you're building muscle, you're losing fat. The cardio group is just losing fat.
Yep. So one of the things,
what's another interesting thing about that study is the cardio group had the biggest drop in waist circumference, but what they're hypothesizing is that it's because they gained muscle in the abs and the obliques,
Yeah.
So the change wasn't representative of fat loss, right? And the cardio group is actually losing muscle mass everywhere.
Really? Huh.
So a person who's measuring themselves either by, like a tape measure and a scale, what is going to show the biggest change? Cardio. The weights are going to halt those changes that they think they're measuring. Right. You know what I mean?
Right.
Falsely. But so I think that's, a big holdup for most people, is because they don't have the ability to go do a DEXA scan and go, see, your muscle is up. Your percentage, you didn't lose any weight this week, but look, you dropped a pound of fat, but you gained a pound of muscle.
Yes.
Yes.
It's such a great point. One of the things that I always
it wouldn't mean much to most people, because they could only think of, like most women only know, like, I need to weigh 120 pounds or whatever, right?
Right.
I need that. I need to weigh. It doesn't matter if she's 130 and shredded with abs. She's not 120 in her opinion.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying? And something's wrong. She needs, and so I think that there is, another holdup for most people.
For sure. Yeah. I always try and tell trainers and coaches, if you're going to venture on the fat loss journey and you're going to step into this arena, always arm yourself with a lot of different measurements, right?
Yes.
Don't rely on the scale. So it's the scale.
The scale is not
calipers. Yeah. The scale's not where it's at, but scale, calipers. I'll do measurements, right? And look, I'll show them, hey, your total numbers are maybe the same, but your arms are up, like trying to really educate them, because otherwise they don't know. And then they're just going to think, oh my gosh, I'm doing horrible. It's like, no, you're doing amazing progress.
You just can't really see it, And I love the photos that people put on social media where the one on the left and the one on the right, they weigh the exact same amount. And they're like, I'm 170 in both of these photos, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And you're just like, what? I lost no weight, but look at the change that I made.
Totally different physique, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Completely different.
All right. So I want to switch gears and talk a little nutrition, because I know that's another topic that you're very passionate about. And my wife's a dietitian, so this is obviously something that I'm always intrigued by. Look, I see protein recommendations that are just all over the place, right? Like literally all over the place. I would love to hear from you. What do you feel like, or what do you recommend is a good starting point for people that are into training and want to try and just, again, lean out and be a little bit more muscular?
So if you look at the research, I think we can all agree that for anybody who trains regularly and at least intensely, should be getting more protein. And it's somewhere around 0.7 to 0.9 grams per pound. So I like to just take that number and make it easy for people and round it up to 1.
Yep.
Okay?
Yeah, me too.
Shoot for 1 gram.
Yep.
So if you're 200 pounds, try to get 200 grams of protein. And not even if your goal is muscle building, even if your goal is fat loss, it can actually help you with fat loss. And there's research to support that, right? We know that protein provides the highest thermic effect of food, right? So maybe that's one of the ways, right? It's also harder the body to metabolize a protein and convert it into fat. There's too many processes that go on that again, probably, I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but it's less likely. It's a
lot harder.
That the steak that you ate, or the chicken breast you ate is going to be converted into body fat as readily as the plain bagel. Right? It's more likely that. So protein can help. And then for those who are worried about their kidneys, there was actually a new study out that showed that higher protein can possibly protect you from from kidney, not causing it.
Yeah, that's so interesting because remember, again, we're not the same age, but we're close enough. Remember, like if you ate too much protein, like your kidneys were going to explode, and
yeah, and I mean, if you look at disease states in the kidney, they have issues filtering that protein. They do. But a healthy, you can't compare that to a health. That's the problem. You can't compare that to a healthy kidney. And like I said, there's a new research study that looked at healthy kidneys, and it may actually prevent that kidney damage, not cause it.
Well, and I'm sure you've dealt with this too, probably way more than I have, because I only do a little bit of dabbling with nutrition. I have other people that I kind of rely on for that, but I mean, how many times when you tell somebody that's 200 pounds, they need to eat 200 grams of protein a day? And like literally the look you would think you just told them, like you told a kid there's no Santa.
You told them you told them to eat an elephant every day. Literally. It's like that's what's in their mind. Like, wait, I have to eat how much protein?
Yeah.
That's
so how do you help them get over that?
Is that like 20 steaks a day? And it's like, no, it's really not that much if you counted it. And that's where the protein shakes come in handy. You know what I mean? Like, for me to get in 200 grams of protein is like, I don't even have to try. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, but I've been doing this for years, and what I eat is not, just like, oh, what do I feel like eating? I have a pretty structured diet, but those are the foods that I like to eat. I like chicken breast. I like steak. I like, I like eggs. I like protein foods. They're enjoyable to me. They always have been. So like I said, for me, it's just like, is it that much protein? You know what I mean? Like, but it is. I mean, it's a very, very common question that I'm asked. And like I said, so I show them, I'm like, look, okay, for breakfast, let's say, you had 3 eggs and a Greek yogurt. That right there is, and we add it up. And like I said, as long as they're focusing on protein at each meal, like, a meal is not a bowl of spaghetti. I'm sorry. That's not a meal. You know what I mean? Like, And so once you've sort of reoriented them to what an actual meal is, like, you know what I mean? Like, a meal is not a bowl of spaghetti. Like, there's almost no protein there. Okay. Like,
no, I know.
Spaghetti with meatballs. Yeah. Now you've got 40 grams of protein.
Exactly.
From your meat. And so now you see, like, yes, it's much easier when each meal focuses on protein versus just a big bowl of carbs. You know, it's a lot easier. And then, like I said, then the protein powder can come in, which, as long as you're using a good source protein, like my Pro Gym, people like look forward to. That's like their dessert.
Yeah.
My favorites like Rocky Road, you know what I mean? Like vanilla peanut butter, like there's typically a flavor that you can find that you will enjoy, and it's literally like dessert.
Yeah.
And it makes, you can put down a 40-gram, protein shake, and, and that all adds up, to that 200 pounds,
Yep. Well, the other thing is too, like you alluded to, is not thinking that you have to take in 200 grams at one meal.
Right.
Well, you break it up, right?
You're not. But you could.
Yeah, you could.
Research now shows if you want to get all your protein in one meal, you actually could.
That's amazing. That's crazy. I don't know if I would go for that myself.
No, right.
If you can, kudos. Yeah, when you show somebody, no, you really only have to get 40 to 50 grams every meal, and then you show them what that actually looks like on a plate, right, or across a day, then they're
doable.
Like, oh,
right,
exactly.
Like you said, as long as you're not like, your breakfast isn't a bowl of oatmeal. Like, nothing wrong with oatmeal. That's great. That's part of the breakfast, but there's, a very small amount of protein in oatmeal, particularly the essential amino acids that we need, like the branched chains and whatnot. So it's, once you sort of get them to rethink what a meal is, then it becomes there's 40 grams of protein along with that, with those oats. Because like I said, most people are thinking breakfast is a bowl of cereal, a bowl of oats, a bagel, and they think that dinner is a bowl of pasta. And it's just like, no. You certainly can have the pasta. But
there's got to be some other stuff to go with it.
Let's get some protein.
Yeah. Well, and two, I'm sure you found this, but breakfast tends to be the hardest, right? I feel like most people with dinner.
Well, yes, because what are your protein choices for breakfast?
I know, eggs. I mean, that's like
the main
go-to,
in America, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'll eat a steak or a chicken breast.
Yeah.
For breakfast, no problem. But obviously nutrition is a little different for me. But most people,
right?
Their nutrition sense is what they were taught as a child, and it's very hard for them to think any way otherwise because those ideas were formed at such an early age. Breakfast is a bowl of cereal or, toast or bagel or, you know what I mean? Like a Pop-Tart or, you know what I mean? Like, or, if I want protein, then it's going to be eggs and bacon. And it's just like, why can't you have chicken?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, that would be weird. That would be that would be weird. People have come into my house when I'm making my breakfast. And they're just like, you're cooking a hamburger? Or actually my son he was, playing a game online and his friend said, what did you have for breakfast? And he's like, a hamburger. And the kid was like, ew, that sounds gross for breakfast. And he was like, why?
No, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing, actually. Okay. So I want to talk about carbs too. Right?
Like
because
I
feel like
breakfast, I think, is the hardest because people think breakfast only involves like these foods, whereas lunch and dinner are wide open with what, what I mean? Like you can have eggs at lunch and dinner, but you can't have steak at breakfast. Oh, steak and eggs maybe, but you can't have a chicken breast,
That's a great point. Yeah, just reframing what normal is.
But it's nutrition. Right? Your body doesn't know whether you're eating eggs or, sure it does, but it doesn't matter whether it's eggs or it's a chicken breast.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love it. Okay. So let's talk carbs because I feel like we run the gamut on this, especially when it comes to fat loss. So I would just love like some general recommendations, right? So somebody's coming in, they're trying to shed body fat. We talked about a gram of protein per pound of body weight. I think that's a great place to start. What about carbs? And maybe along those same lines, if you're really trying to dial things in, how much credence do you put around like carb timing?
Sure.
And like when you're ingesting those carbs?
So let's start with calories, right? We talked about.
Okay. Yeah.
So if I just like looked at you and said, well, here's your diet. Tell me how much you weigh. You're 180 pounds. Okay. You need 180 grams of protein, blah, blah. Here's your diet. And you looked at this and you're like, Jim, that's 3,500 calories. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's what you need. And you're like, Well, I only eat like 2,000, right? If I gave you that diet, you're going to gain weight.
Yeah.
At least initially, right? I mean, maybe if you're underfed, right? Your metabolism will boost back up but in most cases, you're going to gain weight, right?
Yeah,
So
for sure.
the most critical step when I work with somebody is assessing where they are right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what we're going to change. And typically, unless they're on a nutrition plan already, if they're just willy-nilly eating, right? As long as they're not rapidly gaining weight or losing weight, what they're eating is probably right around what their metabolism is, right?
Yep.
Like I said, if somebody's been eating the same thing for 2 years and really hasn't gained, more than a pound or two, or lost more than a pound, then you could pretty much, you don't need to test their put them on a metabolic cart. What they're eating is probably about what's maintaining them, right?
Right.
So I start there. So I get people to do a dietary recall for like 3 days. Just use, whatever app you want to use. And all you really need to worry about are the calories that you're eating.
Yep.
Okay. Sure, it'll tell you protein. I just want to know how many calories you're eating.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's find out. So get that, right?
Yep.
So then we start with those calories, right? Then I break down the macros and I say, let's get you at 1 gram of protein. Okay. So if they're 200 pounds, 200 grams, 200 times 4, that's 800 calories, right? So that comes out of the 3,000, whatever their calories,
whatever their number is. Yeah.
Okay. Then I go, well, you're a man, right? Well, men do better on higher fat diets with testosterone. We want to keep your testosterone optimized. That's going to help with fat loss. It's going to help with muscle gain and strength, right? These are all things that you're wanting to achieve. So let's make sure your fat is adequate. For a male, I would recommend somewhere around 0.5 gram per pound. So that 200-pound person, 100 grams, 100 times 9, that's 900 more calories, right? So that's 1,700 calories, right?
Yep.
Out of that 3,000. So we have 1,300 calories left. There's your carbs. Your carbs are going to make up that 1,300 calories, right?
Yep.
Okay. That's going to be your starting point of your diet. The same calories that you've been eating, but now we've optimized your macros, right?
Yep.
And the carbs fill in the rest.
They fill in the gaps. Yeah.
Yes. And then when we talk about, well, what is your goal now? Do you want to lose weight? Okay. Well, we probably don't want to whittle away your carbs your protein, because we know we need that, right?
Right.
And particularly a man doesn't want to whittle away his fat because he needs that. And I would argue even women need the fat for, there's many essential fats that they need, omega-3s and omega-6s. When you go too low in fat, so I think a lot of mistakes people make is they shoot for that low-fat diet, right? Because people still think, if I don't want to put on fat, I shouldn't eat fat. And it's like, no, that's not the way it works. that's not the way it works. They go on too low-fat diet. Men's testosterone drops. Women, their skin gets flaky, and you know what I mean? It's not good because they're not getting those essential fats. So I would keep that fat there. So where are we going to whittle away if we want to start losing more fat, right? After you've been on this diet a few weeks, how long and I don't have them change anything based on their results, right? What are they, if they can measure body fat, obviously that's best, right? And then once you hit a plateau, then you're going to change what we started with. So what would we change?
Gotcha.
I would change your carbs, right? If you've hit a plateau on fat loss, then I would go, okay, we had 1,300 calories from carbohydrates. Let's pull that down to 1,000.
Gotcha.
And go that way, right?
Yep. I would assume, I could be wrong here, but I would assume just playing around with the macros from the start, do you get some nice recomp changes?
Oh.
Like just getting people's
sometimes
macros
that's all
kind
they
of
have
dialed
to
in.
do, literally, depending on what their goal is, right?
Yeah.
Depending on what their goal is, that's literally all we had to do was keep them on the same calories that they were eating and just alter their macros. Wow. That's why I'm saying it's not always about calories, right? It is, but it is,
but it isn't.
But there's other things. There's other processes in metabolic process that are going on.
Yeah. Okay. we kind of asked a training related question, but same thing here. What are the biggest mistakes nutrition wise you see people making when they're trying to shed body fat?
Yeah, I would say what I said before was they think low fat, right? They're like,
Yep.
oh, I don't want to, if I want to lose fat, then I have to not eat fat, because if I eat fat, it's just going to get stored as fat because it's fat. You
Yep.
know what I mean? It's like, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work
that way. So I think that's the biggest mistake is the low fat or the no carb.
Yeah.
And keto works great.
Yep.
Nothing wrong with keto, although it's been shown to not be so great for muscle gain.
Right.
And obviously, you know why, right? You need carbohydrates, right? And carbohydrates pull water into the muscle and keep it full. And anyway, so if you're on super low, but the reason I don't like keto is because, okay, so I want to lose weight. Now, if it's just for a wedding, like, and you're going to do this for 4 to 6 weeks, fine. But if this is your goal to lose like 100 pounds,
yeah.
okay, and it's particularly if you want to have like abs, not just like lose weight, like you want to look like, I want abs, you know, what's going to happen with keto is you're going to go from eating 400 grams of carbs a day to 0 or, 20, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And the weight is going to fall off of you week after week after week, right? But eventually it's going to stop.
Yeah.
Right? Your body adjusts, your metabolism adjusts.
Yep.
You're going to stop. Now what do?
Yeah.
What do you take? Now you're going to eat less protein and less fat. And you know what I'm saying? So now, there's no need to cut all carbs. You don't have to go from 400 grams of carbs to 0. Yes, you'll lose a lot of weight.
You're just miserable.
You could have gone from 400 to 350 and then lost weight, and then 350 to maybe 300 in a couple. You know what I'm saying? And eventually you may get down to a keto level of carbs, particularly if you're trying to step on stage, and you want, you're trying to have abs and, be shredded and whatnot.
Sure.
But the keto diet is not going to allow you to make those long-term, changes, because eventually you're going to run out, and then what? You're not eating any fat. Now you know what I mean? Like,
right. So, okay, one more question here, and then I'll start to kind of wrap all this up. I love the idea of, again, kind of restructuring macros. Are you doing blood work with any of your clients when you do this kind of stuff?
So right now, yes, in the past, right now, between the businesses with the supplement line and the training is mainly online. So no, those, but normally, yes.
Yeah. I never knew, but.
And particularly if they're older, I'll actually take them to like an anti-aging specialist.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Huh.
And we'll do a full workup,
Yeah. No, that's cool. And what do you hope to get out of seeing them? What do they bring into the equation?
Well, obviously, there's some, if we can find any hormone issues that they may, and I'm not just talking about testosterone, thyroid issues, you name it. So there's a lot.
Yep.
Even micronutrient deficiencies.
Yeah.
If you're deficient in particular micronutrients, and a lot of people are, your metabolic processes are not going to run properly, and that's going to make it more difficult to, see the results, whether it's muscle gain, fat loss, more endurance, whatever it is,
Yeah. Well, again, it comes back to, you said this at the very start. Once you optimize the inside, it's easier to optimize the outside.
Yeah, precisely.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah, I love it.
Because that's where it's all starting,
Yes. All right, my friend, big question time. If you could alter the space-time continuum and give young Jim Stoppani one piece of advice, what would it be?
That's a great question. I guess it would be, I don't have that many injuries. I'm lucky. I don't know. I was lucky in that I was well read, and so, like no like massive mistakes like come to mind with what I was. I'd probably say less volume at the beginning. You know what I mean? Like as a young kid, you know, I thought, oh, I'll follow Arnold's workout.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah.
That's probably
20 sets.
Yeah,
Figure out what
I did not need 20 sets, and I was 14 years old.
Right.
That would probably be, you know, one, you know, slow down. You know, just slow it down a bit.
Yeah, I love it, man. All right. Last but not least, we got our lightning round. So 5 fairly short questions. Your answer can be as long or short as you like. All right.
Yep.
Number 1, as I was going through the IG feed, the pin post up top, how did you get connected with Joe Rogan?
So the first time I met Joe, now I haven't been on Joe's podcast, believe it or not. I've not been on there.
Oh man, come on, he's got to fix that.
He talks about me. He's a fan of mine.
Yeah,
he
sure.
Talked about me, but and he's reached out. He reached out many years ago before he was like huge.
Yeah.
And then my team kind of dropped the ball, and by the time we got back to him, he was so big that he's not getting my DMs. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
like,
no.
You know, somebody on his staff is sending my, I mean,
between.
you know, I'm not even sending my own DM. I have a staff, you know, sending to him. So you can imagine his staff. So, you know, they don't know that, hey, this is the guy that he talked about, called his boyfriend on the podcast. But I first met Joe when I was at the magazines for Weider magazines. You know, we had men's fitness, and Joe was on the cover. This is back when he was doing Fear Factor.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
Yeah,
that's way back in the day, dude.
Yes, this is back in like 2002, maybe or so. 2000,
oh my gosh!
Somewhere.
Wow.
Yes. So Joe, he was, you know, local. He was right around there, so he would stop in the office every once in a while. We would just, you know, shoot the shit about training. He was into martial arts. I was. I did a lot of martial arts, so you know, we had a lot of great conversations. And you know, and so he was, you know, reading my stuff in the magazines, and you know, when his podcasts blew up and he started getting into health and stuff, you know, he would always bring in nuggets that he learned from me. But I've never actually been on the podcast, believe it or not.
I don't know, dude. It might be hard nut to crack now when he's getting Elon and
that's what I'm saying.
President,
you know,
and all that. Like the bar is incredibly high now, dude.
You know, it's my team's fault. You know, we should have jumped on it when he reached out. Back then, when I could probably DM him and he would answer.
Right.
You know, now, like I said, just trying to get through to the staff. So no, this is the guy like that he was talking about, you know, like, he's going to want him on, you know what I mean? They're like, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it, man. That's cool though. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Number 2, talk to me about just 13 years at Weider. And again, you have to be of a certain age to really understand what that meant to the community. Yeah. Right. There was no internet. There was no social media. If you wanted to learn stuff, it was either muscle magazines or going to a library and physically getting journals and photocopying stuff. So just talk to me about what that was like.
God, yeah. I mean, that was like that was a dream, because I could remember reading the magazines as a kid and learning science and thinking, wow, you know, someday maybe I'll work for Joe Weider. You know what I mean? And inform people the same way that these scientists are doing that. You know what I mean? Like, I had no concept of what that would mean, you know what I mean, at the time. But so getting there was, you know, I mean, Joe was a huge hero of mine. So being able to, like, you know, he would call you into the office and be like, oh, I loved your article on, you know, volume, you know, the high volume versus low. This is a great article. And he would flip through and go, I really like this part. It was, you know, it was absolutely amazing. I mean, this is the, you know, father of bodybuilding, if you will. I mean, you call Sandow really the father of bodybuilding, but, you know, Joe is really the father of organized bodybuilding with the IF, you know, BB, and getting information. And he wasn't the only person doing magazines, you know, like that. There was the Bob Hoffman's magazines as well, but he was one of the, you know, first people to think about how can I educate someone on building a stronger, healthier body.
Yeah.
You know, so being there was absolutely amazing to me at the time, because like you said, that was the one way, you know, like those magazines outsold every other, you know, you could talk about Muscular Development, Iron Man
Yeah. No, I
magazines. These
remember
are
them
all
all.
great magazines. I read all of those as a kid,
Yep.
but the numbers that Muscle and Fitness was doing was like 40 million readers, whereas, like an Iron Man might have like 10 at the, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
they were like, in worldwide, it was, tens and tens of millions of subscribers, and readers. That was the main way people got their information. And so being there, at that time was pretty amazing, but it was also sad because it was like kind of right at the end.
Sure.
Because, this is the time, I think bodybuilding.com, and here's, another memory that people, like a website where you could go and learn about training and buy supplements. That then became, the biggest thing to get information was bodybuilding.com. But, they launched in like 2000 and, what was it, 4, I think? 2004, somewhere right around there. Right around when I got to Weider, and, I'm like, whoa, wait, in YouTube and whatnot. I'm like, wait, I could teach somebody how to bench press with a video?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I compare it to teaching somebody to tie their shoe. I'm like, imagine writing a book about how to tie a shoe with still photos and text, right? Or you can do a video and actually show them. Then you loop it, like, what would be easier? And so I'm like, this is the way to go. And so bodybuilding.com contacted me when I was at Weider, not to steal me, but just to have me do videos for them. And so I started doing videos for them. Well, as I said, this is sad because Joe actually ended up selling the magazines to American Media. David Pecker, if you know that name, who owned the Inquirer and all those magazines. So they came in and took over from Joe, and they were very adamant about not doing anything on the internet because they thought it would cannibalize the magazines. Whereas all of us in the staff are going, no, this is, we need to be there or you're never going to be able to catch up. Like, this is the way it's going. You need to be there. So I started doing videos on bodybuilding.com, but also on Muscle Fitness. We created our own website, right? And I would do these, we called it Muscle Fitness Raw. I would do things on how to do the bench press. And, the higher ups were like, who the hell wants to watch that? Nobody's going to want to watch that. Why would they want to watch some guy doing a bench press? And we're like, no, this is the future here. You don't understand, like, who would want to watch somebody who wants to learn how to bench press might, you know what I mean? But they had no, the higher ups had no concept of what exercise even was, Sure. It's all about what's in the red or black, what's in the black or the red, what's making money or, so they were very adamant against that. Not doing, anything online because it would cannibalize the magazine. So like I said, initially it was amazing. And then it was kind of sad because you could see what Joe had, created and then just kind of get destroyed, by this new, owner. So.
Yes. Yeah, it's frustrating. And one thing I can attest to is, I started writing articles, I think in 2001 or 2002. And man, just seeing the shift over 20 years, right? Because
God,
hey man,
it's amazing.
At first I start writing for like T Nation, right?
Yes.
And it's an article.
You're right.
Okay, here's an article, and then they're like, hey, can you give us some pictures? Okay, so here's an article and some pictures, and then video. Okay, could you give us a couple videos? Now it's to the point where they're like, can you just send us a video?
Right. Yes.
They like, hey, if you have an article, great.
And preferably under 60 seconds.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's just the way we're conditioned to consume information.
Everybody has attention deficit disorder because there's so much information coming at them. They can't watch a 5-minute video on the bench press. It's got to be 30 seconds.
Yes. Yeah. And there's got to be 30 cuts. It's got to look like a Marvel movie, right?
Exactly. Right.
It's crazy.
It's got to be entertaining on top of educational.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Infotainment.
That's why I say it's so hard right now because, like I said, I'm a scientist. I'm boring. You could go watch far more entertaining videos by people bench pressing and whatnot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's hard, for a boring scientist who just wants to educate you and not entertain you,
Yeah, it is. It's hard, man. Okay, number 3. What's it like working with some of these A-list celebrities, right? Like, I mean, I know you listed Dre, The Rock, LL Cool J. What has that experience been like?
Very, very very positive. I'd say, I love working with those types of people because they're not the client that you have to go to their house and go, come on, we got to, I know you don't want to do this. They're literally at the gym before you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're, like Dr. J told me, is like, I'll eat chicken and broccoli every meal if you tell me to do that. I'm like, no, that's not what we need. He was, like I said, he was willing, they're willing to go that extra mile because there's a lot of money on the line,
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I got Chris Pine ready for Captain Kirk. We had to put 30 pounds of muscle on him, right? This is without steroids. No, this honestly, there's no steroid. I know other people do. You can talk about, some of the other Marvel actors, there and whatnot about steroids and all that, but Chris Pine put on 30 pounds of muscle in a matter of months, like lean muscle mass. Now he was on the lighter side because he was coming off another movie where he had to be thinner and whatnot.
Right.
But again, we put 30 pounds of muscle, and then he had to do the what are those Jack? What is it? The Hunt for Red October. Those series that Jack, whatever. I'm not a huge movie guy, so anyway. So then we had to drop the 30 pounds because he had to become a runner.
Oh my gosh!
But I love it just because these are not the people that you like. They're willing to do almost anything.
Yeah.
Anything. And the nice part is most of the people that I've got to work with, there's been a few, little a-holes, but like, Dr. Dre is the most relaxed, like down to earth guy you've like. That's awesome. It's like, the persona that you think about, you know what I mean? This, kind of gangster rap. And it's just like, he's just a dude, you know what I mean? He's a dad. Chris Pine is like same thing. He's just a dude, you know what I mean? Like, he doesn't see himself as this, movie star. He's just a guy. At least that's the perception that I got from him.
I love it.
Yeah. So that's a lot of fun. I love working with those guys, those types of people, because like I said, they're willing to go the extra mile.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, number 4. Dude, talk to me about the tats. There's a lot of tats. If you're not watching on video, go look at Jim somewhere. There's a lot of tats, dude. When did you get your first one?
I'm pretty solid from my head to my toes.
It's truly impressive, man.
Solid.
Like truly impressive.
There's like my arm, even the inside of my belly button is tattooed because it just looks weird with a big white, round little spot in the middle of your stomach. I'm fully, solidly tattooed from head to toe. So I grew up doing a lot of martial arts. My dad was a 2nd degree black belt. And, sometimes there would be, these masters from Japan who would come over, and I would see them changing in the locker room with the full, Japanese style bodysuits, right?
Yeah.
And when I saw that, I was just like, oh,
that's it.
As soon as I'm old enough, that's what I'm going to do. Then I get into bodybuilding, right? And you really couldn't have any tattoos. So I held off for a while until I was done competing in bodybuilding. And then as soon as I hung up my posing trunks, if you will, I literally went to the tattoo shop and started, literally covering my body. And I think part of it, like I said, it was an impetus since I was a kid, but also, I was going from like a national level bodybuilder, my off season weight would be close to 300 pounds. I'm like 200 now, literally.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of it was sort of hiding what I had lost or what I was used to seeing as my physique, with the tattoos. So I think there was some of that. And the other thing is I like a challenge. So I'm the type of person who's, I'm going to finish a full bodysuit,
Yeah. I love
I'm going to finish it. It's going to,
Yeah. Is there anything left?
Other than a couple spots that just need coloring? No, it's like I said, I'm pretty full.
And do you have like a guy or a girl?
the face and one other area that I don't have.
Okay.
And I'll leave it at that.
I love it. I love it. But do you have like a specific guy or girl you go to, or is it like an eclectic? Oh, I like this person that does this or whatever.
Yeah. So it's mainly 3 different artists, only because of moving. Mainly, like I started in Connecticut, and then came out here and ended up going to this woman who I saw some of her work in the magazines. She did one of my leg sleeves and some other parts. And then I found a very famous tattoo artist called Greg James, who does a lot of Japanese style, which is mainly what I have, is Japanese style. And I didn't go to him when I first moved out there because he's very well known. So I just assumed he was an ass. And like you have to spend a lot of time with these people. And a lot of tattoo artists are, they're on the fringe,
Yeah, sure.
They're not the typical person. So you have to spend a lot of time with them. A lot of them are not good socially. So I just assumed the worst of Greg. Then I met a tattoo photographer, at a random family party. He was just like, "Who's this guy with all the tattoos? I've never seen you before." And he's like, "I shoot for Tattoo Magazine." He didn't have a single tattoo. I was like, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, I know." He said, "I've never gotten one." And I'm like, "Oh, I'd be interested to see who you would recommend. I have some, things I want to finish off." And he's like, "Greg James." And I'm like, "Oh, really?" And he goes, "He's not an A." He goes, "Oh my God, he's the nicest guy in the world." And that's exactly.
There you go.
So Greg did a lot of the finishing.
I love it. I love it.
So mainly three different tattoo artists.
That's impressive. Okay. Last but not least, what's next for Jim Stoppani? What are you working on? What are you excited about? Anything?
Well, trying to figure out these long length partials, how critical they are.
Okay.
No, it's interesting because, like we were saying, there wasn't a lot of research on strength training and bodybuilding in particular. A lot of the research that we did have would either be in disease states like muscle dystrophy. We kind of gleaned some things about muscle growth from, these disease states, or it would be in athletes, it's just mainly like strength and performance. And we would, take little bits, but there was nobody really going, "Oh, does a muscle grow more in this range of motion or this range?" There's no money in that. There's nobody who's going, "Oh, we want to know, and we have the money to do because research costs money."
Absolutely.
But now with social media, believe it or not, some of these social media experts have the money and they're funding research now. And so there's more and more research coming out on bodybuilding in particular. And so I'm kind of excited to, see what the new rules are going to be because, there's a lot of guesswork that that's gotten us to this point because we don't know, if you asked me a year ago what would be more important in the range of motion, from the full, the start or the finish, I'd probably say the finish. We talked a lot about peak contraction and all, you know what I mean? It's one of the Joe Weider principles is the peak contraction and how critical that is at the end. Well, there was a study showing that the peak contraction, if they only stayed in that range, grew the least amount of muscle. So, it's, And so, but the lengthen, the full range, that first half seems to be the most critical. So it's really interesting as the research comes out to see where this is going, in the volume, right now, we think somewhere around up to 42 sets per week can still cause hypertrophy. And then we can talk about whether it's best to do 20 sets once per week for muscle group or 10 sets 2 or 3 times per week.
Right.
And so we're really getting into this era where we have more data and we can really start figuring out more. And what I do is I take all that and bring it right to the gym.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And start looking at it right here in the real world. What happens when we have people just do this, half range of motion? What if you did that first half of the range of motion for set number 1, right? It allows you to overload the muscle because you're not going through the full range of motion. So now you're placing more overload. But now the other thing is it's almost like potentiation, whereas you're able to lift more weight on that first set to do not the full range of motion. Now you're going to lift a lighter weight for the full range of motion. All of a sudden that weight now seems lighter.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And so
absolutely.
Can all this help with muscle growth? And so, I'm really excited about just sort of figuring out, those things and being able to be more specific on our knowledge about what's the best way to encourage muscle hypertrophy. And is it the same for everybody,
Probably not, but
no,
that's what we get to find out, right?
Exactly. Probably not.
But dude, this is why this has been so great. I love people like yourself. Like, I don't know, I've been doing this 24 years now since I got out of college, and I'm still like switched on and asking questions, and love to hear the same way.
And your mind is constantly changing about ideas that you once had.
Yes.
I said, if you asked me a year ago, what's the most critical part of a range of motion? I would say this right here, the final range of motion. Probably not.
Yeah.
Now, if you asked me, it's probably not that critical, because there was a study, like I said, that showed, at least in beginners, that if they did just the initial, and this was on calf raises, not biceps, but if they did just the initial half of the range of motion, their calves grew more than if they did the full range of motion. But now we have a study in trained individuals where they looked at the initial versus the full, and they both grew the same, which is also interesting, that you didn't need to do the full range of motion to get the same amount of muscle growth.
Yeah.
Cool, and could you maximize the muscle growth with that half range, because now you can use more overload than the full range. You know what I mean? So how do you incorporate all that? This is just what I love, putting this, finding all these puzzle pieces and trying to put them together and make sense out of it. It's, I love it.
I do too, man.
Mystery,
Jim,
we're trying to.
Absolutely. Well, Jim, man, this has been absolutely amazing. I've had so much fun talking to you.
Likewise.
You're welcome to come back on anytime.
Please, definitely. Anytime you want to have me back.
Yeah. Where can my listeners find out more about you?
So pretty much any social media platform, TikTok, Instagram. I'm on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter. I've got a YouTube channel. And then I have my own, the fitness website and app is jimstoppani.com.
Perfect. I'll make sure I get direct links to those in the show notes. So if you're listening and you want to find out more about Jim, I'll drop all those in there. But again, Jim, I really appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much.
It's been a blast.